So as much as you have to be on your game for daytime diving, particularly in terms of all the equipment, imagine what it's like for nighttime.
This is a fantastic journey to look into the undiscovered world of nighttime underwater animal behaviour. I'll be diving into the dark depths of Ireland's southwest Atlantic coast to reveal the secrets of some common but also lesser known species as they fight for survival at night.
You really have to go through your list 2 or 3 times to make sure that you have everything, and in this case a depth gauge. This is an additional piece of equipment that enables me to dive safely and come back every time on time. So here we go. This again, I'm preparing myself this time for a night dive for later on this evening, and this is one of the most incredible things that I think you could ever do anywhere in the world, but particularly in Ireland, because there's not an awful lot of information in the context of animal behaviour underwater at night, and this is what I want to really explore and show you just how incredible it is. There are some incredible highlights, things like swimming crabs. The first time I came across a crab that had modified back hind legs, they were shaped into paddles and it took off swimming like this. That was incredible.
This variety of a swimming crab took off and displayed why it was given its name. At night and under attack, it can rapidly deploy its paddle-shaped hind legs, enabling it to swim away from danger. Usually, this is good enough, but when followed, it will eventually settle on the bottom and deploy a second defensive mechanism, that of hiding in the sand. Not a lot is known about nighttime underwater activity. When the sun sinks beneath the horizon and the last rays of light penetrate the vertical water column, Ireland's bay and inlets and the open ocean beyond become theatres of life. For those animals that hide during the day become active at night. A typical night dive reveals the secrets of life under the water and opens up a whole new arena of discovery. It is as if the sandy bays and coves, seemingly devoid of life during daylight hours, become the highways of animal movement at night. For it is here that we really see marine animal behaviour. The process of searching and feeding becomes much more visible and is possibly the best time to explore species behaviour beneath the water. For the night diver, Unknown factors such as pitch black environment, disorientation, what will I encounter, what's that crawling across my leg, to a heightened sense of hearing, all lead to feelings of sheer terror. Holding one's nerve becomes an absolute prerequisite. Very soon after immersion, I came across another species of wrasse, the ballan wrasse. Related to the cuckoo wrasse, although not as colourful, but equally beautiful, this fish was at rest, laying low in a rock crevice out of harm's way until daylight. Difficult to spot among seaweed-covered reefs is the long-legged spider crab. For camouflage purposes, this crab breaks off seaweed and attaches it to its body. With a tiny crab body on stilts, the long twig-like legs of this crab species are perfect for walking over seaweed-covered rocks. No bigger than your thumb, this spindly crab feeds mainly on seaweed.
Then there's illuminating jellyfish with your dive lights, which are video lights. So you put the light under the jellyfish and the whole dome is lit up. That's just beautiful.
When diving at night and swimming across open ground, the thought of what will appear next occupies your mind. What passes into the beam of my underwater video lights is possibly only a tiny fraction of what is really out there. One of my favourite nighttime encounters is with jellyfish. In this case, a compass jellyfish pulsated across my path. I wondered, how does it know which way is up when moving in the dark? Do they bump into rocks or the bottom?
There's other things then, like for instance, the walking gurnards. These are fish that have modified front or pectoral fins, and they kind of walk along the bottom. I never knew. I mean, I saw them being caught when I was a kid on a boat with my father, but to see them underwater in their natural environment at night is incredible. It's also a very scary prospect being down there, because you never know what you're going to come in to. And one time, for instance, I was lying down filming some other species of crab, and next thing I turned around and here was this 4.5 to 5 foot long bullhuss, or greater spotted dogfish, a shark, or one of Ireland's sharks. And I just looked around and said, wow, look at that. And I didn't know whether to be scared or frightened or whatever it is, but I had to turn around really, really slowly. And the footage that you're watching now is actually as a result of that turning around, and you can see how close up to this beautiful shark species that I got. Amazing, amazing experience.
As I moved over the sand and my underwater beam lit the terrain ahead, a red mullet came into view. This beautiful fish inhabits the waters of the Mediterranean, the Portuguese and Spanish coasts, and is a relative newcomer to the area in which I dive. With twin barbs, it searches the sandy substrate for small fish and invertebrates. It can be found in relatively shallow water down to a depth of about 400 meters. They cover a lot of ground when looking for food. Keeping up with them is much easier at night, as they tend to swim away during daylight hours. One species that always turns up are small sharks. Lesser spotted and greater spotted dogfish can't resist the presence of night divers. On many forays into the depths, this active hunter comes out at night. During the day, they rest on sandy bottoms, in amongst kelp, and are rarely seen actively fishing. They hunt sand eels, gurnards, gobies and other small fish species. These sharks possess a rough skin and they are extremely flexible. Luckily for me, they don't bite. However, I always treat them with respect. It is estimated that over 100 million sharks a year are killed in our oceans. most of the sharks are killed for their fins. It is scandalous that in today's Europe we still kill sharks, especially the blue shark, for their fins for export. This practice is putting huge pressure on shark populations worldwide.
And then I suppose the highlight of it all really, just the whole sequence with the little cuttlefish. These are tiny little animals and they're no bigger than my little fingernail here. And when you come across them underwater at night, because they're absolutely impossible to see during the day, watch their behaviour. Here I was under the water with the little cuttlefish, and I was following one or two or three of them, and every time I was following one, another one came in, and in some cases they fought together, which I was able to film. Fortunately, that was a fantastic experience. But the creme de la creme is when they buried themselves as a measure of defence. They went into the sand and they burrowed themselves. You can see it here. They're just actually shimmying down in under the sand, and they're covering themselves right up to their eyes. So all you're seeing is their eyes. And I was looking and looking and looking at this tiny little marine creature and wondering, is that it? And then, wow, what did they do? The two of their little arms came out and it did a complete circle and it started to scoop the sand over their head. And I just said, this is incredible. This is the best of Ireland underwater at night. What a place. You got to do this. Amazing.
When I came across this 1 centimetre long little cuttlefish, I was fascinated to observe its behaviour. It obviously wasn't expecting me, but as soon as I appeared, it started to change colour. It certainly didn't seem frightened, as it allowed me to film it for many minutes. Watching it moving was mesmerising. It uses undulating fringes and rocket propulsion, a process of moving water through its siphon. This gives it direction. You can clearly see the sand grains move as the jet of water points downward. Sometimes the little cuttlefish would bury itself in the sand. So my observation is that if colour change and shooting out black ink is not enough to escape predation, then burying itself in the sand is quite an effective method to avoid being eaten. Many minutes passed as I lay on the bottom observing this behaviour. Looking directly at the little cuttlefish, I could barely see what happened next. It was only through the camera monitor that I observed the most incredible behaviour, that of extending its arms out and forward to scoop sand over its head. Once finished, the arms withdrew. Amazing. As I zoomed out, I placed my hand into the frame, just so that I could show you the scale of this tiny, amazing sea creature I call the Master of Camouflage. One of Ireland's most colourful crustaceans is the spiny squat lobster. In order to grow, they must molt their old shell several times. I found this squat lobster along the walls and crevices of an old pier. The colour is beautiful. I love the combination of red, orange and electric blue. Isn't Mother Nature wonderful? This group were living alongside a conger eel. Even though the eel will eat them, it seems that they prefer the extra protection given by the conger. The squat lobster can give a nasty nip, so great care must be taken when around them. I've had them crawl all over me, such as their interest in me when I'm lying still trying to film them. Using its tail to wrap around seaweed, the snake pipefish is virtually invisible. Descending toward the bottom, this relation of the seahorse is long and slender and prefers to sway in the current while sucking in its prey consisting of tiny microscopic plankton. Sometimes, while I'm out on the water, I come across floating clumps of seaweed. I lift them aboard and usually find a snake pipefish in amongst the weed. Snake pipefish are the largest of our pipefish, growing up to 60 centimetres. Lying still, the scorpionfish is difficult to spot. They have the ability to change colour and so can blend into any background. They can be found on rocks, among seaweed or out on the sand. When observed, I've noticed that they stay very still and possibly use camouflage and stealth to capture prey. Scorpionfish can be found in the shallows of rock pools at low tide. Grey gurnard are amazing fish, for they can literally walk on the bottom. With modified pectoral fins, the first 3 rays are like fingers and enable the fish to literally crawl across the sand. They can walk for hours at a time and cover vast areas in their search for prey. Prey includes small fish and crustaceans. The closely related tub gurnard is distinguished from the grey by bright blue markings on its fins. In shallow water, when currents, tides and wave action steer up the bottom, they tend to swim more than walk. Not all species present on the one night, and so I continually took to the darkened depths to find yet more fascinating marine life behaviour. Sometimes, and because our underwater hearing is limited, I don't know what I've captured on underwater audio. As I dived and descended under kelp cover, this sound only became apparent after I got back home to watch what I had recorded. The underwater microphone had recorded the sound of a whale. This was later confirmed as a humpback whale. I'm always trying to observe animal behaviour. One night, I was thinking about moths and how they are attracted to streetlights. With that thought in my mind, the next time I went night diving, I decided to film what would happen if I left one of my video lights turned on and placed on the bottom. To my surprise, plankton began to move towards the light source. Within a few minutes, tiny animals from crustaceans to cephalopods and other species crowded the scene. Burrowing sea anemones are amazing plankton catchers. Their sticky tentacles quickly move inwards, taking the caught animals into their central mouth. It is wonderful to observe some of the smaller crabs. One such crab is the hermit crab. This species does not produce its own shell and so has to borrow an empty snail shell. During daylight dives, I noticed hollowed out depressions on the sandy bottom. I never really knew how they got there. Were they caused by currents or were they created by some marine animal? Whilst observing crabs over a few night dives, I discovered an edible crab digging a hole in the sand. Were these the species responsible for the sand hollows I had observed earlier? It seems that the crab was hard at work digging. Was it looking for shellfish such as razor clams? Perhaps it was, or maybe it's the female retreating to dig a pit on the seafloor so that she can lay her eggs. Fascinating. One of my favourite marine fish is the John Dory. I've observed many, but in daylight it's almost impossible to get near them. Imagine my surprise when I came across them at night, and rather than swim away, this one approached me and stayed around. An eerie looking fish, this particular one was covered in sea lice. Preferring to eat sand eels and other bottom-dwelling fish, the John Dory is a master at sneaking up on its unsuspecting prey. The black spot is reputed to be the thumbprint of St. Peter. Looking like a large eye, it may act as a deterrent to other predators wishing to eat the John Dory. Coming up next week,
We're here to take a behind-the-scenes look at the National Aquarium of Ireland.
to find out about their education programs, and I take a dive in the big tank.